I never thought my life would change so dramatically in just one day. I was Alice, a carefree 10-year-old girl with loving parents and big dreams. That was until the accident happened. It was a sunny Saturday morning when my parents decided to take me for a picnic in the countryside. I was excited, bouncing in the back seat of our old sedan as Dad drove us along the winding road. "Are we there yet?" I asked for the 100th time. Mom turned to me with a smile. "Almost, sweetie. Just a few more." Her words were cut short by a deafening screech of tires. Everything after that was a blur of motion, noise, and pain. When I finally came to my senses, I was in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and the smell of antiseptic. A nurse with kind eyes approached me. "Hello, Alice. How are you feeling?" "Where's Mom and Dad?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The nurse's face fell, and I knew something was terribly wrong. "Your father is in another room. He's hurt pretty bad, but he's going to live. Your mom, she didn't make it." Days passed in a haze of grief and confusion. When I was finally allowed to see Dad, I almost didn't recognize him. He was pale, covered in bandages, and he couldn't move his legs. "Alice, my brave girl," he said, his voice weak but full of love. "Come here." I approached his bed cautiously, afraid I might hurt him. He reached out and pulled me into a hug. "It's just you and me now, kiddo," he whispered, his voice breaking. "But we'll get through this together, okay?" I nodded, burying my face in his chest, letting the tears flow freely for the first time since the accident. The next few months were a whirlwind of changes. We had to move to a ground-floor apartment to accommodate Dad's wheelchair. I had to learn to do things I'd never done before, like cooking simple meals and helping Dad with his exercises. As the years passed, Dad and I settled into our new normal. Despite being confined to a wheelchair, he was determined to give me the best life possible. He worked tirelessly as a remote investor, his keen mind and sharp instincts making up for his physical limitations. "Alice, come look at this," he'd often call out, excitement in his voice. I'd rush to his side, peering at the screens filled with graphs and numbers. "See that spike? That's our ticket to your college fund," he'd explain, his eyes twinkling. I didn't always understand the intricacies of his work, but I understood one thing clearly: every move he made was for me. High school flew by in a blur of study sessions, part-time jobs, and quiet evenings with Dad. When it came time for college applications, I was torn. I didn't want to leave him alone. "Dad, maybe I should just go to the community college nearby," I suggested one night over dinner. He put down his fork, fixing me with a stern look. "Absolutely not. Your mom and I always dreamed of seeing you succeed. Don't let my condition hold you back." So, with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, I headed off to college. Those 4 years were a whirlwind of new experiences, friendships, and learning. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make Dad proud. Before I knew it, graduation day arrived. As I stood on the stage, diploma in hand, I scanned the crowd until I found him, my dad, beaming with pride from his wheelchair in the front row. After the ceremony, he pulled me into a tight hug. "Your mom would be so proud of you, Alice," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Fresh out of college, I landed a job at the mayor's office. It wasn't glamorous work, mostly filing and answering phones, but it was a start. I threw myself into the job, determined to work my way up. It was during this time that I met him, the man who would become my husband. I was grabbing a quick coffee during my lunch break when I quite literally ran into him, spilling my latte all over his crisp white shirt. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, mortified. Instead of getting angry, he laughed. "Well, that's one way to break the ice. I'm Jake." From that moment on, Jake became a constant in my life. He was kind, funny, and understanding about my dedication to my job and my father. When he proposed a year later, I said yes without hesitation. There was just one condition. "Jake, I need you to understand something," I said seriously. "My dad, he's the most important person in my life. I can't leave him alone. Jake took my hands in his. Alice, I love you, and that means I love your family too. Your dad's welcome to live with us. Hell, I insist on it. Tears of relief and joy sprang to my eyes. I knew then that I'd made the right choice. We moved into Dad's spacious apartment after the wedding. It was a bit of an adjustment at first, but we quickly fell into a comfortable routine. Jake and Dad got along wonderfully, often engrossed in heated debates about sports or politics that I could barely follow. Life with Jake was mostly wonderful, but there was one dark cloud that hung over our happiness: his family. I tried my best to get along with Jake's mother, Evelyn, and his two younger sisters, Brittany and Courtney, but it seemed like a losing battle from the start. From the moment they met my father, their attitudes made it clear they saw him as less than human. The way they looked at him, with a mixture of disgust and pity, made my blood boil. I remember the first time they visited our apartment after Jake and I got married. Evelyn's nose wrinkled as she entered. "Oh, Alice," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It must be so challenging living with your father's condition." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "It's not a challenge at all, Evelyn. Dad's disability doesn't define him or our life together." Brittany chimed in. "But doesn't it, cramp your style? I mean, having to take care of him all the time?" "I don't take care of him all the time," I said through gritted teeth. "Dad is independent and capable." Courtney, not to be outdone by her sister, added, "I just don't know if I could handle it. It's so depressing." I tried to explain to them about the accident, about how Dad's disability was the result of a tragedy that took my mother's life. But they didn't want to hear it. Their minds were made up: my father was a burden, and by extension, so was I. "I just worry about the future, dear," Evelyn said one day, cornering me in the kitchen. "What about when you and Jake have children? You wouldn't want your father's issues to affect them, would you?" I was speechless with rage. The implication that my father's disability was somehow contagious or hereditary was so ignorant it left me stunned. Thankfully, Jake always had my back. He overheard his mother's comment and stepped in immediately. "Mom," he said, his voice stern, "that's enough. Alice's father is part of our family now, and I won't have you disrespecting him or Alice." Evelyn huffed, offended, but Jake stood his ground. It was moments like these that reminded me why I fell in love with him. Jake's job as a helicopter rescue pilot meant he was often away from home, flying into dangerous situations to save lives. I was incredibly proud of him, even if his absences were hard sometimes. While Jake was out saving lives, I divided my time between my job at the mayor's office and spending time with Dad. Our evenings often found us in the living room, Dad helping me go over reports while we watched old movies. As time went on, I started to minimize contact with Jake's family. It was easier that way, less stressful for everyone involved. Jake understood and supported my decision, though I could tell it pained him to see the rift between us and his family growing wider. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when Jake brought up the idea that would change our lives. We were sitting in the living room, watching Dad struggle to maneuver his wheelchair through the narrow doorway. "Alice," Jake said, his voice thoughtful, "what do you think about buying a house? We could get a place with wider doorways, maybe even a garden. It would be easier for your dad to move around, and he could spend more time outside." The more Jake talked, the more I warmed to the idea. A house where Dad could be more independent, where I could garden and keep myself occupied when Jake was away on missions. It sounded perfect. The next few months were a whirlwind of house hunting, mortgage applications, and planning. We found a beautiful single-story house with a spacious garden. I took out a mortgage in my name, and with Dad renting out his old apartment to help with the payments, we made it work. We threw ourselves into renovations, determined to make the house perfect. We widened doorways, installed ramps, and created a beautiful bedroom for Dad with direct access to the garden. Watching Dad wheel himself out onto the lawn for the first time, a content smile on his face, made all the hard work worth it. Then came the housewarming party. Despite my reservations, Jake insisted on inviting his family. At first, things seemed okay. Evelyn, Brittany, and Courtney arrived, their eyes widening as they took in the house. "Well," Evelyn said, her voice tight, "this is quite something." As they strutted from room to room, I could see the jealousy in their eyes. But I never expected what came next. We were all in the living room when Evelyn suddenly announced, "Jake, darling, this house is lovely. I think I'll move in with you instead of Alice's father." The room fell silent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What?" I managed to choke out. Evelyn turned to me, her eyes cold. "Well, dear, you could send your father to one of those nice institutions for the disabled. After all, he's not really a fully functional person, is he? He doesn't belong in such luxurious conditions." Before I could respond, Brittany accidentally spilled her juice all over Dad's feet. The three of them burst into laughter. That was the last straw. "Get out," I snarled. "Get out of our house right now." Jake was right beside me, his face a mask of fury. "Mom, Brittany, Courtney, leave. Now. And don't come back until you can treat my wife and her father with respect." As we helped Dad change into dry clothes, I felt a mix of emotions, anger at Jake's family, love for my husband and father, and a fierce protectiveness. This house was our sanctuary, and I vowed then and there that I would never let anyone threaten our peace again. Just when Jake and I thought we'd found our slice of happiness, fate decided to throw us another curveball. It started with the sudden death of Jake's grandfather. The old man had always been kind to me, unlike his daughter Evelyn. He left behind a beautiful house and 2 expensive cars, but no will. Before Jake and I could even process the loss, Evelyn swooped in like a vulture. "Jake, darling," she cooed over the phone, "your sisters and I are moving into Dad's house. You understand, don't you? You already have that lovely home Alice's father pays for." To avoid a nasty legal battle, Jake agreed. "Maybe this will help smooth things over," he told me that night. "Maybe they'll finally accept you and Dad." I doubted it, but I supported Jake's decision. We had our home, our love, and each other. That was enough. 2 years passed without a word from Evelyn or Jake's sisters. The only news we heard through the grapevine was that they weren't working and were burning through the inheritance like there was no tomorrow. Then came the day that shattered my world. Jake was on duty, flying out to rescue some stranded hikers in the mountains. I was in the garden with Dad when my phone rang. An unfamiliar male voice greeted me. "Mrs. Thompson? This is Officer Rivera from Mountain Rescue. I'm sorry to inform you there's been an accident. Your husband's helicopter, it went down. There were no survivors." I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember falling to my knees. The next thing I knew, Dad was holding me as I sobbed uncontrollably. The week that followed was a blur. I moved through funeral preparations like a ghost, barely aware of my surroundings. Dad handled what he could, but I was lost in a fog of grief. In a moment of desperation, I called Evelyn. Maybe Jake's death would bring us together. How naive I was. "Evelyn," I choked out, "Jake's gone. There was a helicopter crash." There was a long pause before Evelyn's sharp voice cut through. "Well, what did you expect, Alice? You pushed him to work so hard. This is your fault." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Now listen," she continued coldly. "I expect you to arrange the best funeral possible for my son. Spare no expense. But don't expect a penny from us. You got yourself into this mess, you can pay for it." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd been slapped. Dad wheeled over, concern etched on his face. "Alice? What did she say?" I couldn't repeat Evelyn's words. I just shook my head and collapsed into Dad's arms, fresh tears streaming down my face. As I cried, the full weight of my new reality crashed down on me. Jake was gone. The one person who had always stood by me, who had loved me unconditionally, was never coming back. And his family, the people who should have been there to support me, had turned their backs on us once again. The day of Jake's funeral was a blur of black clothes, somber faces, and murmured condolences. Through it all, Dad was my rock, his steady presence beside me a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. As I stood by Jake's casket, accepting condolences from his colleagues and friends, one thing was glaringly obvious: Evelyn, Brittany, and Courtney were nowhere to be seen. Their absence was like a slap in the face, a final betrayal to Jake's memory. As Dad and I drove home, exhausted and emotionally drained, I noticed something odd. "Dad," I said, frowning, "did we leave the lights on?" As we pulled into the driveway, my heart sank. Boxes and furniture, our furniture, were strewn across the front lawn. The front door was wide open, light spilling out into the evening darkness. "Stay here," I told Dad, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. I marched into the house, only to find my worst fears confirmed. Evelyn, Brittany, and Courtney were sprawled across our living room, surrounded by half-unpacked suitcases. "Well, look who's finally home," Evelyn drawled, not bothering to get up. "How was the funeral?" "Sorry we couldn't make it. We had prior commitments." I was speechless with rage. What are you doing in our house?" Brittany piped up. "It's our house now. All of Jake's property belongs to us. You and your crippled dad can go back to that crappy old apartment." "You can't do this," I yelled, finally finding my voice. "This is our home. You have your own house, the one you inherited from Jake's grandfather." Evelyn had the audacity to look sheepish. "Well, about that, we may have sold it. And the cars. We needed the money for our lifestyle, you understand." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you burned through an entire inheritance and now you think you can just take our home? Get out now." Now, Evelyn said, her voice sickly sweet. "Let's not be hasty. This is family property, and we're family. You're just the widow." That was the last straw. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "I'm reporting a break-in and attempted theft," I told the operator, my eyes never leaving Evelyn's shocked face. The next hour was chaos. The police arrived, and I provided them with the deed to the house, clearly in my name. Evelyn screamed and protested as the officers escorted her and her daughters out. "This isn't over," she shrieked as they were led away. "We'll sue. We'll take everything." The day after the funeral and the chaotic encounter with Evelyn and her daughters, I was exhausted. The emotional roller coaster of the past few days had left me drained. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at a cup of cold coffee when my phone rang. "Hello?" I answered, my voice still hoarse from crying. "Mrs. Thompson? This is Mr. Daniels from Daniels and Associates Law Firm. I was your husband's notary. Could you come to my office today? There's an important matter we need to discuss." My heart skipped a beat. What could this be about? When I arrived at the notary's office, Mr. Daniels greeted me with a sympathetic smile and pulled out a folder. "Your husband made a will, Mrs. Thompson. He wanted to ensure you were protected." I sat there, stunned, as Mr. Daniels explained the contents of Jake's will. Jake had left me a portion of his assets, including part ownership of our house and his savings. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. He knew his family might try to contest the will, Mr. Daniels explained. So he made sure everything was ironclad. As I left the office, I felt a mix of emotions. Jake had tried to protect me, even after he was gone. But the reality was, the savings weren't enough to cover the mortgage. I started considering selling Dad's old apartment to cover the costs. For 2 weeks, I wrestled with this decision. The mortgage payments were steep, and between my salary and Dad's pension, we were barely scraping by. I was on the verge of calling a real estate agent when my phone rang again. "Mrs. Thompson? This is Sarah from Pinnacle Insurance. We're calling about your husband's life insurance policy." I listened in shock as Sarah explained that Jake had a substantial life insurance policy due to the high-risk nature of his job. When she told me the amount, I nearly dropped the phone. That can't be right," I stammered. I assure you, it is, Sarah said kindly. Your husband wanted to make sure you were taken care of if anything happened to him. The insurance payout was enough to cover the mortgage entirely, with a significant amount left over. I immediately transferred the money to pay off the house and put the rest into a secure savings account. As the weeks passed, I threw myself into work and caring for Dad. The house that had once seemed like a financial burden now felt like a sanctuary, a last gift from Jake. One evening, as Dad and I were having dinner, he looked at me with concern. Alice, have you thought about moving on? Meeting someone new? I shook my head firmly. No, Dad. I don't think I could ever love anyone the way I loved Jake. I'm content with my life as it is, my work, this house, and taking care of you. Dad nodded, understanding in his eyes. Just remember, Alice, you're young. Jake would want you to be happy. I smiled softly. I am happy, Dad. I have you, I have our home, and I have Jake's memory. That's enough for me. As I cleared the dishes that night, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Life had thrown us curveballs, but we had come through it all. Jake had made sure of that. 2 months after Jake's passing, life threw me another curveball. I was sitting in the doctor's office, having gone in for a routine checkup, when she gave me news that changed everything. Congratulations, Mrs. Thompson. You're pregnant. I sat there, stunned. Pregnant? How could this be? Then I remembered, Jake and I had been trying for a baby before the accident. This was his final gift to me. As the news sank in, a warmth spread through my chest. Our baby. Tears of joy streamed down my face as I placed a hand on my still flat stomach. That evening, I shared the news with Dad. His face lit up with joy. Oh, Alice, he said, his voice thick with emotion. This is wonderful news. Jake would be so happy. As the weeks passed, my belly grew, and so did my excitement. I threw myself into preparing for the baby's arrival, turning Jake's old office into a nursery. Every kick, every ultrasound picture, was a reminder of the love Jake and I had shared. One sunny afternoon, as I was tending to the garden, a car pulled up in front of our house. My heart sank as I recognized Evelyn, Brittany, and Courtney stepping out. What do you want? I called out, not bothering to hide my irritation. Evelyn approached, her face a mask of false contrition. Alice, dear, we've fallen on hard times. We were wondering if you might let us stay in your father's old apartment? Just until we get back on our feet. I couldn't believe the audacity. After everything they'd done, they had the nerve to ask for more? No, I said firmly. That apartment is rented out. And even if it wasn't, I wouldn't let you stay there. I want nothing to do with any of you. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, then widened as they landed on my protruding belly. Well, she sneered. Looks like someone's been busy. Couldn't even wait for my son's body to get cold before you found a new man, could you? I felt a surge of anger, but I held my tongue. Let them think what they wanted. I didn't owe them any explanations. This child is none of your concern, I said coldly. Now, I'm asking you to leave. Don't come back. They looked shocked at my firm stance. For once, they left without causing a scene, though I could hear Evelyn muttering insults under her breath as they drove away. As I watched their car disappear down the street, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had finally stood up to them, finally cut ties completely. They would never know this baby was Jake's, never have the chance to poison another generation with their toxicity. That evening, as Dad and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. You know, Dad, I said, rubbing my belly gently, I think everything's going to be okay. Dad reached over and squeezed my hand. Of course it will be, sweetheart. You're strong, just like your mother was. This baby is lucky to have you. As the sky turned from orange to purple, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The loss, the pain, the struggles, but also the love, the strength, and now, this new life growing inside me.